Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. And it's always a Football Friday here on Texas Football. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Pleased to be joined by the estimable Jerry Hamilton, and of course, the newest member of the On Texas Football family who needs no introduction, my friend, and now glad to call him my co-worker as well, my man Jeff Howe joining us. All right, so we got a lot to get into on the show today, guys. All your super chats, throw them out there. You can interrupt the show at any time and jump to the front of the line. We'll try to address as many questions and comments as we can, so throw them out there. We appreciate all you guys for joining us, especially on a holiday edition of the Friday live stream. Got a lot to talk about. Texas expanding the front office for the Longhorns, adding a new member, Aaron Joe. We'll get into that coming up. We'll also talk about the latest member, the newest member of the Texas coaching staff, Mark Orfe. We haven't talked enough about him considering the short choice news, which blew up and I think kind of took over all the conversation and discourse for the Longhorns. And we'll talk about, of course, the coaching vacancy, another one on the 40 acres with, of course, the running backs coaching position being open with the short choice leaving to go to the Detroit Lions. So a lot to get to here on the show. Let's start off, I think, guys, talking about the newest member of the Texas front office, Aaron Joe, who is going to be the director of scouting now for the Longhorns.
Yeah, Aaron Joe, he was the there you see Matt Zien's tweets. He was the recently the general manager of Georgia Tech football there. He's a former Lakeland, Lake Gibson High offensive lineman, played at Georgia Tech. I think he had a stint in that recruiting department at Alabama as well. But again, I love this hire for Texas, not just the expansion of Brandon Harris's staff, so to speak, but I like this hire because he's from Lakeland, Florida. He went to Lake Gibson High School, and then he's been at Georgia Tech. So he's been part of recruiting in the Atlanta area, part of recruiting in Florida as a player from Florida high school football that then played at Georgia Tech. I like the additions, just like Josh Dunson from Memphis, the Atlanta ties, the ties to the state of Georgia. I love these because, look, I'm a proponent of 80% of every recruiting class for Texas in future years is made up of Texas, Georgia, and Florida kids. If you can make up 80 to 85% of your classes from those three states, you're going to be one of the most talented programs in the country every single year.
It reinforces that recruiting that part of the country, Jerry, that it's here to stay. And Sark is dead serious about wanting to get guys out of that part of the country. I mean, this isn't – I hate to go, in the Wayback Machine. This isn't Mac Brown hanging out at Miami Central watching Dalvin Cook to prolong a meeting. This is dead serious stuff. So, yeah, I dig it. Tashard Choice helps you get a foothold in that part of the country, and that's great. But with him moving on, I just like the fact that Sark isn't relying on one guy as a one-for-one replacement. It's, hey, let me throw all the bodies I can, all the resources I can, to make sure that we not only don't lose our grip there, but that we can build on it and we can have some staying power here in that part of it. So for Texas, for all the way around, I dig it.
Yeah, it's amazing how many connections now you're getting to Georgia Tech in that Atlanta area, and it's not a coincidence at all. I mean, that there's no more fertile metro area in the country and producing more NFL talent than that Atlanta area. You talk about it all the time, Jerry. Interesting. I like part of his resume because he was at, I believe, UConn for a while and worked with them for a little while. And I love that, Alabama, anytime you can get some that Alabama kind of stamp of approval on your resume, I think that also he's a kind of a fast riser because he moved up fast after being at Georgia Tech and working with the offensive linemen and then became, I believe, their associate director of player personnel. And then has been kind of on the fast track as a personnel guy. And he's got all the right connections. You're right about that, Jerry. His roots are all in the right places for Texas. And you said it yesterday, and we were talking about the short choices absence and all the boxes that you got to try to check with the next person you're bringing in. You talked about, hey, they got to try to get another foothold in Florida. They got to get somebody who can make inroads in Florida. And boom, just happened that quickly. Should have been working on it. You brought it up yesterday after the short choice news.
What the crazy thing how recruiting changes because you don't have as many days on the road necessarily for your assistant coaches. It's all changed, right? I mean, the calendars change. So having a really good in-house staff that can identify players and prospects is huge. It's massive because look, if you're the coaching staff at Texas, you're going to recruit in SoCal. You're going to recruit in Georgia. You're going to recruit in Florida pretty heavily, all those. Then you're also going to dabble in Alabama. You're going to dabble in Mississippi. Look, Jeff Banks went and offered 4 kids in Charlotte, North Carolina. If you're really going to expand your footprint and really be as dominant as you can be, it's about identifying guys so your staff isn't wasting time on the road. Because, like, if you look at Jeff Banks' trip in January, late January, when you go to Brunswick, Georgia, that's a whole day of recruiting lost, essentially. It's not lost because you went and saw a great player. But what I'm saying is you travel there, you travel from there. It's not like you can go hit 6 high schools in that area. So how does your staff maximize the guys on the road? They know exactly who to see. It's not like when Mac Brown told the staff, you got to go see every high school in Texas because they're recruiting Texas, where you went in every door and shook every coach's hand, right? It's different now. It's spot recruiting by and large. You have areas you go to, but it's spot recruiting. So how do you maximize that? How do you put a staff together that can identify the players, identify the prospects, has the connections to get you in the door on the ones you want to get in on, and then it's quick trips in, boom. You see the people you need to go, boom, on to the next one. That's what this is really all about. That's where recruiting's change instead of having a coach that goes to Tampa and goes to 30 high schools in 4 days and shakes everybody's hand. This is identification early, and this is mapping it out, and because you don't have as many days on the road as you used to as a staff.
Maximizing your resources, Jerry, maximizing time. I mean, I compare it to I even taken a step further, look at the in-house model. In terms of identifying guys and evaluating guys, by the time those coaches get out to go on the road, they got to know where they're going. Like, they don't have time to watch film. They don't have time to sit through, hey, I need 4 receivers this year. Let me watch the top 15 guys on the board. No, I need you to tell me, hey, narrow it down to like 6, and then let me go out in the spring or the winter or whatever, and let me go meet with those 6. That's the part of it that I want to make sure people don't miss. I think now more than ever for the actual assistant coaches, it's more so about relationships necessary than identifying talent. Once you narrow it down to, let's take Tashard Choice of running backs, right? Because we've seen him do this. He's narrowed his guys down, and then it's like, you know what? I'm going to recruit Jarrett Gibson's going to be my guy that I go after nationally, but I really like Christian Clark. I like what he brings to the table. May not be everybody's cup of tea, but he's at the top of my board. That's when the coaches can get involved with the tape breakdown. They don't have time to do all the legwork that they did once upon a time. So your in-house staff better be good. And I think I have worried, Jerry, about there being too many cooks in the kitchen, but I think if you've got that thing organized, everybody understands what their role is, then it can just work almost like an assembly line if you got it set up the right way.
Yeah. I mean, that front office, they brought in Josh Johnson as well earlier this year. They're bringing in a lot of guys, and are they? These are you talked about this, Jeff. Are these new positions? Are these positions that weren't previously? Because you brought this up. Do we know that in fact?
Yeah, for Aaron Joe, like Texas did not have a director of scouting title. Now Bill Reese had a assistant special assistant or assistant director of player personnel -- scouting. But they didn't have anybody with the director of scouting title. So, I mean, that's another way to get guys. I mean, to get guys in the door and give them a nice fancy title. I've in my job, I've never been one about the title, but hey, I'm not the one trying to earn a paycheck in the college football front office either.
Yeah, no, it is.
Hey, Jared, can I ask you real quick about, because you spent more time in Metro Atlanta, obviously, than I have. We saw Houston in the years after Katrina, it became less of an A&M town or a Texas city than it kind of became like this SEC melting pot. with the population growth in Metro Atlanta, I can't imagine all those kids are just growing up and play at Georgia. It's got to
be Jeff. It's just like Texas. All these kids don't grow up with A&M and Texas jerseys on anymore, or whatever that is. I mean, same thing. Yeah, state of Alabama it still is, but state of Georgia, it's too big now. That Atlanta metro area is too big. South Georgia, a lot of those kids grow up Georgia now, or maybe a few FSUs mixed in there as well, but. In the metro Atlanta, there's been so much population growth that, look, there's a ton of Georgia ties. Don't get me wrong. But it's very similar to Texas in that way. It's not living and dying with the Bulldogs on every Saturday. Now,
gotcha.
Georgia's won 2 national titles, so they're very difficult to beat when Kirby says, you're one of the guys we want to be in this program. But, again, to that point, and we've talked about it before, that's why, Kirby, he gets 6 of the top 10. That's the best he's done in the top 10 in state in a few years at Georgia. And that's after winning 2 national titles, because it's the same thing in Texas. I think there's the expectation, well, why doesn't every kid, top 10 guy want to stay in Texas? Well, maybe he's not from Texas. One, maybe some situation's better for him somewhere else. I think it's all the same things that go into recruiting in Georgia. And look, I think why Georgia's a great state to recruit is, one, it's talent. You're talking about Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Those are the 3 most talented states in the country, I think, by far. And that's not a knock on California. California has their high-end, top-end guys. They just don't have the depth in that state they used to have. But the thing with Georgia is you have University of Georgia. Now, Georgia Tech's plucked a few more guys under Brent Key. But outside of that, there's a lot of Power 4 kids, and only about 16, 17 can go to Georgia every year, 18, maybe 20 on a big class year. Well, they have over 100 Power 4 kids there. So where are those other 80 guys going to go? Clemson built their national title run off of the state of Georgia. Yeah. I mean, obviously people know Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence from Georgia, but go back and look at those rosters. That thing was built with Atlanta area defensive linemen, secondary kids, skill kids on offense. And then the other part of that was when Dabo was really building Clemson up before he even got to that point, Southwest Corridor, Florida, Sammy Watkins. Obviously, C.J. Spiller was more of a Central Florida kid. So, but in Georgia can only take so many of those guys. Where in the state of Texas, you have A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, and LSU right there. And, and there's some kids at LSU's closer to home than it is Austin, right? And you still have a little bit of that with, Auburn. But, again, where are all those kids going to go in that state? They're not all going to go to Auburn. They're not all going to go to Alabama now. Nick's not there. They're not all going to go to Tennessee. Tennessee gets some kids. Clemson's going to get their kids. There's a lot of really good players there. And if you're Texas, you can get in enough battles to where you can sign 3, 4, 5 really good ones every year.
It's like Louis. It's a better version of Louisiana. It's Louisiana with more players, and you don't have Jerry. I've tried to explain it. It's really hard unless you've been down there. If a kid's good enough to play at LSU in Louisiana, the pressure they face to stay at home is unreal. I mean,
especially in South Louisiana, especially South.
I mean, I've had kids tell me that they've been down to Texas. Mine wasn't going to get the kid, but let's say it's Texas, LSU, and Auburn, and the kid's been told, hey, if your mom still wants to have her job on Thursday, you better sign with LSU instead of Auburn on Wednesday. Like it's that kind of stuff in Louisiana.
Damn, I believe it because my mom and dad are from Louisiana, and Louisiana is one of them states. Got some crazy folks in Louisiana. Yeah. All right, let's get to a couple of questions here. Actually, I did see a super chat that I want to get to here first. It's from Juan. Juan, appreciate it. Super chat. It says, what do you all think of Anthony Lynn on running backs coaches? And also, did DeSoto know he was like this or swept under the rug? I'm assuming he's talking about Jonte Cook. The news today that he was arrested again. This time, was it marijuana possession or something like that? So unfortunately, we continue to hear bad stories about Jonte Cook. I'm rooting for the young man, so I don't want to see him spiraling. He's got way too much talent for that. So I'm hoping that at one point he just, decides to eliminate the distractions and focus and get back to, football. But right now he's got a lot of distractions going on. What are your thoughts, Anthony Lynn, running back, ICE coach? I don't know if he's ever coached at the college level. Seems like an NFL guy. I know he's got Texas ties, but I know he's an NFL guy.
He's a Salina High, went to Texas Tech, but he's never coached college football. He has been an NFL lifer.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
But that's what I think is going to be interesting to see where Sark goes with this running back coach job. Because, look, I think there's three kind of levels to this of impact for him. Is it going to be a guy that played in the NFL or truly coached in the NFL? Not was a GA for 1 year, but like truly coached it in the NFL. Is there a talk the talk and walk the walk element that Tashard Choice had? Now, Tashard's he is a rare one as far as the way he was able to recruit. I mean, he was a home run, right? But is it going to be that? Is it going to be somebody with Texas ties? I don't know. You just lost the guy who got you in the state of Florida and the guy who really kickstarted you in the state of Georgia in recruiting. So how important is that in it? So there's the NFL part, the recruiting territory part, and then there's the age part, Rod. Younger guy, kind of relates to the kids, but that's what Tashard had. See, Tashard was he was the full meal deal, you know. So where's Sark going to go with this? I mean, does he want that NFL, not just talk to talk, but it was walk to walk? That's what's going to be interesting to see where Sark goes with it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Because you're not going to get us a short choice. You're not going to get somebody that checks every box, Jeff. He checked like every box. That really wasn't. The one thing he maybe didn't bring was like some schematic addition, some innovation schematically, but everything else he went above and beyond and gave you so much added value. What do you prioritize if you're Sark? That's the question.
Yeah, I like the more I think about this, the more I like the approach Sark took hiring Kenny Baker. Like, hey, instead of getting a proven guy, which we talked about the culture and the way staffs mix and shoot, Jerry, you and I have heard enough stories over the years about times where a guy might come in, might be a hell of a coach and come into that. Now, this is why culture matters. Might be a hell of a coach. You come into that coach's office and it's something else. It's a disaster in there and it just doesn't work. It doesn't gel. So I think Sark from that standpoint, I don't worry about him finding the right fit, but Kenny Baker, he went, look, instead of getting a proven guy who may or may not fit the culture, let me get a young guy. It's in the NFL, you know, as an assistant defensive line coach, but came really highly spoken of. A lot of people spoke highly of him, and maybe he's the next guy. Let me invest in him. And so that's part of where I think Sark could go with this hire, assuming assuming your offensive staff stays intact as it is. Go find who you think the next potential. Can you identify that guy and hire him?
Hey, somebody's talking about the jobs posted. Jeff, I know you could probably look that up. I guess UT posted a couple of the jobs. So that might be something we can bring up. By the way, everybody's having fun with Josie. Josie, my favorite guy on ontexasfootball.com or the chat, because everybody's got to have a favorite kid, right? Or something, a favorite person. Joe said his kids are, he called them gremlins. So they're green, right? So they're wearing Oregon jerseys probably. Those kids wear Oregon jerseys.
You gotta be old to get the Gremlins reference. All right, let's get to another couple other questions. How about this one from Leo? Says Texas is pushing for Cody Green. Question mark?
Texas has been pushing for Cody Green for a while. Look, that was the first stop. The Texas staff, like I think 5 guys jumped in a plane and went out to California the week after the loss in the semifinal. That was the first stop, was Mater Dei. Cody Green, I think one of the top 75, top 100 level prospects in the country, right tackle for Mater Dei. He's been committed to Oregon for a while. Texas has been making that push since they went out there. So I know somebody reported Texas making a push. They've been pushing for him since they went out there. And I think that's one of I think there's 4 offensive linemen. We have 8 guys that have official visits scheduled to Texas right now on the offensive line. I think there's 4 left that I could see making official visits. I could see this number getting up to 12 official visitors at Texas on the offensive line this June for 5 or 6 spots, depending on how the numbers fall, if you can get the 6 guys you want. That's Cody Green at Mater Dei, who will be out. He'll be out in the spring before a June official visit, whenever that gets set up. And then there's Kenye Pepe, the tackle at IMG. There's Brett Colajay as well, the guard at IMG, although I think he's a long shot for Texas to actually get. And there's a fourth guy there who my name is escaping me right now, but somebody will bring it up. But I think there's 4 guys left on the offensive line. I can't believe I'm forgetting who I'm talking about here. There's 4 guys left on the offensive line that I think will schedule official visits to Texas.
Look,
Okay.
as far as
Cody Green's never been on campus. So for this stuff to sorry, Jeff, for this stuff to really move forward, it's just like Jamie French last year, what we talk about with Tristan Keys this year. That unofficial in the spring has to happen to see if this is going to be a good fit, and then you get to the official visit process.
If I've got, because I saw, I'm sure we can get to it. David Keith Williams is asking about ideal classes. Look, with this O-line class, Jerry, I usually have a crush on 1 or 2 of these O-linemen a year. If Toa Katoa, if he puts pen to paper at the end of the day, then fill out the rest of the class with whatever. I'm good. Give me a 375-pound road grader from Euless Trinity on the interior offensive line. I'll take that.
Yeah, who Texas or whoever gets him will get him down to 345, and then he'll be a monster at 345. And in fact, if you guys missed coffee and football this week, Wednesday is Hump Day with Hills. Tony Hills comes on, and what I've got him to do 2 of the last 3 weeks is break down tape. 3 weeks ago on the Wednesday coffee and football, Rod, he broke down John Turntine and Felix Ojo. This week, he broke down Samuel Rosenborough, who's an absolute stud out of Clearwater. I love him, and Toa Katoa. So we're going to get him to break down a couple more guys next week. The offensive tackle I'm forgetting is Malachi Lee from Honolulu, Kamahami Mine. He's the other guy I was thinking about. Other guys, the other offensive linemen already have OV set. I'll run through them real quick. John Turntine, Felix Ojo, Max Wright, obviously committed. Samuel Rosenborough, he's already in. That list is on TexasFootball.com, by the way. Those 4 guys, Toa Katoa, Nick Robertson, that is 6. Then you have Zayden Crimpen is 7. There's one more is 8. And that 8th guy is Sam Utu from Orange Lutheran, who I think Texas leads for, by the way.
All right, good stuff there, Jerry. All right, let's get to another question.
Notice how Jerry snuck in the Hawaii there, Rod. He and CJ are going to Rochambeau for that scouting trip.
CJ's losing that. CJ gets to go to the NFL Combine, so he's out on Hawaii trip.
Oh, he gets Indianapolis instead?
Yeah. He wanted the Combine, so we're discussing Hawaii after that, and there's not going to I think producer Matt needs to go produce that one live.
I think, Matt would agree. He's like, hell yeah, I wouldn't leave that. All right, let's get to another one from the Nick Turn. Thank you, the Nick Turn, for the question. Dream get for Texas at running back coach. Dream get. Is there? I mean, one is off the market, actually. Stan Drayton, for those who don't know, didn't he just accept a position with Penn State, I believe?
Yeah.
So he's off the market there. Do you have a dream, hire, pie in the sky kind of hire? That, you could have anybody who's top of the list?
I mean, look, I think for recruiting purposes, resume, I mean, a Tony Alford would be really good.
Yeah.
That's good. Ohio State.
Tony Alford was a guy. Now, look, he's been a Midwest guy since 2009, Notre Dame, Ohio State, now Michigan. He's also recruiting a lot of the same guys in this class that Tashard Choice was. I mean, you look at Javian Osborne, it was Texas, Michigan, top 2. You look at Amari Latimer, Michigan was on that list. You look at a Derek Cooper down south, he's looking at Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, he's a one-time Georgia commitment. I mean, Tony Alford he from a name ID and already knowing the kids would have some real value to me. And that would be one for me, but we'll see.
An interesting guy that we just started throwing out names as a staff, and one guy I keep coming back to, Kevin Smith at Ole Miss, is a guy that's been with Lane Kiffin, was with him at FAU, has been with him at Ole Miss, has been in Oxford since 20 when Kiffin got there. So I don't know, maybe he's looking to move on, what have you. But a guy that kind of like Tashard Choice, highly productive guy in college, play in the NFL. He's a Miami guy and went to UCF, so he's very familiar with the state of Florida. Obviously has had to recruit it and has a foothold in the Southeast. So that's a name that intrigues me a lot, is Kevin Smith.
You got anybody, Rod?
All right, let's Man, what? Maybe Frank Wilson. Is Frank Wilson? Who is he? LSU? Where's Frank
he's
Wilson?
the highest paid running back coach in the country.
All right, that's not happening then. I take that back. I don't know. I would like you to go. I mean, I wouldn't mind like Jeff kind of brought up someone who has NFL ties, like a young up and coming fast riser in the NFL who may be interested in like becoming a coordinator real quick, or becoming like basically rising up pretty fast, but I know Sark may not want to look at certain. He doesn't want to look at someone as a stopgap. Someone looking at Texas kind of a stopgap, and someone that's just kind of going to hop from place to place just to be able to rise up the ladder. I think he's looking for more substance and somebody that may stick around for a while, because now he's approaching a ton of turnover. You're going to have it naturally anyway with all the success, but he may be looking for somebody that at least he can have some continuity for a little while. It's a tough hire.
I don't think.
All right,
real quick on that, Rob, back up what you're saying there. I don't. Sark's never said it publicly, and I don't think he'd never say something like this publicly. But you can tell whenever he's asked about it, when he talks about it, the Brennan Marion thing, I think he figured Brennan Marion would be at Texas for more than a year. And I think the fact that it was after having to fire Andre Coleman and then hiring a guy and then having it turn over so quick, I know he wasn't very happy with having 3 receivers coaches in 3 years. So I do agree he is looking for somebody that's going to be there for a couple of years.
I think Rod's lagging
a
little.
Let's hit another. Okay. All right, let me come back then.
All right, so we'll answer this one, Jeff, while Rod's calibrating there. Bring up Craig Johnson, which I want to hit this with Boobie Feaster. We've been saying he was going to reclass. He officially did that today. What are Texas' chances with wide receiver Boobie Feaster out of the Soto since he's going to reclassify? Look, I think Texas will be in the mix there for sure for Boobie Feaster. Texas was by the school, obviously, in January. Most of the colleges knew ahead of time this was coming. It was just a question of when that the Feasters were going to announce this decision. But will he automatically be the number 1 receiver for Texas in this class in state? I'm not so sure about that. I think Caden Finley is regardless. Is what I think.
Yeah,
that's not a knock on Boobie Feaster. Really good player. I think Texas staff has Caden Finley higher than any national recruiting ranking does. I'll say that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And look, I know Sark is quick to point out whenever he talks about recruiting, hey, we don't go off anybody else's rankings. We do our own rankings. Man, I hope you have your own in-house rankings. I hope you're not
with all this staff.
And look, I've got friends at 24/7. I got friends at On3 that do this stuff. I as much as I like those guys, I hope Sark, as important as this job is, Jerry, I hope he's not like, well, what did so-and-so think of this? All right, let's just go start offering these guys. Like, no, do your own thing. Like some of the guys are going to be no-brainers, but it's kind of like I was talking about with the Tashard choice, was like whether it was Christian Clark 2 years ago or Ricky Stewart in this class. Yeah, just go. Hey, I've got my one national guy, but I really like this guy, whether it's I just like him as a kid, he's a schematic fit, whatever. That second back has kind of been, hey, Tashard, go find kind of the beauties in the eye of the beholder. Go find you a guy. And he's found a guy. And like you said, one of those guys has ended up being a 1,000-yard rusher, which meant Trey Wisner.
I was going to bring this question up because this is really good. We've had some OL questions. I continue to read that Felix Ojo's leaning towards Texas. Find it hard to believe he'd commit to Texas with John Turntine. What's going to be interesting to me, I think a few offensive linemen are leaning to Texas right now. But the reality is not all those guys are going to end up picking Texas because the numbers game in how these recruitments are going to play out. I think Texas will have 2 offensive line commitments, maybe 3 before June official visits. They have 1 right now, Max Wright. I think they will certainly add 1 more. They could add 2 more to get to 3. So that class could be halfway done by the time June official visits begin. And so if you just look at this, Texas is on some really, really talented tackles. And obviously John Turntine and Felix Ojo are going to be talked about the most on these chats or on message boards because they're from Texas and they're DFW guys. I'm here to tell you, Sam Roseborough, I keep calling Rosenborough. It's Roseborough. is an absolute stud. Go watch what Tony Hill said about him yesterday. I believed it before Tony said it. I think the guy's going to end up being a top 50 prospect in the country when all's said and done. Then you have Sam Utu out of Orange Lutheran. Hey, go watch his volleyball tape on YouTube. I mean, the guy's an athlete. Then you have Cody Green from Modern Day. So 2 of those guys are going to end up joining the Texas class, I think, at tackle. But what happens if one of those guys commits early before June official visits? And some of those guys that there's 4 guys leaning to Texas, that's not going to end up being the case. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out with this Texas class. Because, again, I think there will definitely be 2 offensive linemen committed before the June visits, and there's a potential for a 3rd. So you could have half that class done before the June official visits. And then those spots get really tight. And even if a kid's leaning to Texas or has been reported leaning to Texas, it may not work out for him in Texas, depending on when guys commit. That's just the reality of this offensive line class, I think.
Yeah. The other thing there, Jerry, we can talk about guys we like or guys that project well. What does Kyle Flood's board look like? And who would he, number 1, be willing to take in the late spring, early summer? And 2, which of these guys are, hey, I don't care if it takes him all the way to the 11th hour to decide, I'm holding the spot for him. And some of those guys, hey, look, it may be some of the guys we're talking about. It may be that some of the guys we're talking about, no, like he would, if he finds a guy that's of equal value, of equal talent, maybe he's willing to do away with another guy. So yeah, I like the fact that in a year where you need to reload, that you've got no shortage of options on your offensive line. And I like the margin for error too with guys that play high school tackle, especially if they have the body type and the athletic ability. If it doesn't work out at tackle, you can always kick those guys inside to guard. So, the more big athletic long guys you get, the better.
Yeah. So this is a interesting question here too. Sorry about Rod's having a sticky connection there. Tom Bailey, this is a really interesting question because it's becoming more prevalent in college football. What's recruiting like out of the country? Does Texas High have scouts in different countries? The answer to that's no. I remember the info about the guy from Germany at New Hero Canoe. So there's a guy that's part of Rancho Santa Margarita staff, and he's got a lot of ties to Germany. And so when guys who are really good young players in Germany that they need to get to the States to be recruited for high school football, they tend to funnel those guys there. That's why Hero Canoe. Then there's the J.J. Hahn, who signed with Georgia, same deal from Germany, moved out to Rancho Santa Margarita. So there's that. But to your question specifically, no. But what I do think is interesting is that as these staffs are expanding, I truly believe Texas needs to have somebody that's kind of looking overseas as well at maybe those top programs in Berlin. When I was at ESPN, we had an Under Armour camp in Cologne, Germany. By the way, it was an awesome trip, but I'm not sitting there bragging about it. It was just one of the coolest things I've got to do in this business. I never thought I would. But we had a camp in Cologne, Germany, an Under Armour camp. I mean, that thing sold out in an instant. Everybody wanted their kids there. So kids have interest in football, like the Valden Sohn, the defensive lineman out of Switzerland, who's now at Dyke, Virginia, Blue Ridge School, who Texas offered, and I think will end up officially visiting Texas. Kenny Baker went to see him in January. There's more and more of those kids that have interest in football, and they're coming to football a little earlier. So I think as your departments expand, I think having one person that maybe has some toes in the water and can identify some of those kids early, I think is smart, because those big athletes that grow up playing basketball and soccer that find their way to football as middle school kids, whatever middle school they call it in Europe, and start getting an interest in football, man, those kids they're like a ball of clay to mold. And those kids they're so coachable because they don't know. They don't know anything they're really doing in football. They're learning the game, but man, there's some really talented kids that are coming to the States going into college ball or being recruited out of countries in Europe where they play ball to the States for college football. I think you're going to see more of it.
Yeah, the NFL actually has been expanding their footprint in terms of they actually have been expanding it with flag football more than anything, but just trying to expand the footprint of American football internationally to grow the revenue base. And I think one of the things that is going to help potentially what you're talking about recruiting those maybe international pockets of talent is the fact that the NFL is more and more putting a ton of money into growing the game internationally. They got like a 10-year plan to try to get, the game basically a foothold in certain countries. They had it when they had NFL Europe for a while, and there's still some of those pockets over there, from NFL Europe they're trying to tap into.
I would add this, Jeff, when scholarships, I say when because I do believe it's come and go to 105.
Yeah.
That's a great place to have a couple of developmental kids,
No
right?
doubt.
That are there. They don't have the early expectations of playing time. Those kids are ones that you can sit and develop for a couple of years, and they don't come in with the same expectations a lot of times. So when that thing moves to 105, we've talked about, I think Bobby and I were talking about on Coffee and Football one more. I would almost reserve a couple of spots for international, really talented, raw football players.
Yeah.
And let them develop over time.
Look, there's only so many, I'll use Canada as an example, right? There's only so many, 6'6", 6'7", 260-pound kids that at some point we're like, I'm probably not going to be in the NHL. Maybe I need to go do something else. And hey, we'll make you a defensive end. We'll make you an offensive tackle, whatever. Jerry, I'm surprised because the guy I was thinking about, again, I know his name's not popular to mention, but I thought Art Briles was onto something about 20 years ago at Houston. You remember he went and got Sebastian Vollmer out of Germany and was initially a tight end, grows into being a 6'8" offensive tackle, and ends up playing with the Patriots. And I don't know how Belichick ended up drafting a bunch of these Germans or Canadians or guys that were just late to football but had a lot of development left to do. But it never really caught on. So I don't know, Jerry, what the catalyst was lately for maybe it's just like you said, Rod. Maybe it's just kids are growing up more familiar with the NFL and the American football model.
Part of it, Rod. I think Rod made a great point on that. To be honest.
So.
All right, let's hit our sponsor over at Flat Creek Estate Winery before we move on. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually vineyard closest to Austin? That's right, folks. Flat Creek Estate Winery is just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local spec, so please give it a try. Or, of course, you can go check them out at your local Central Market. I saw them there as well, so the good word is getting out about Flat Creek Estate Winery. Flat Creek also is a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. Perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway with your significant other. That's Flat Creek Estate Winery. We appreciate them for sponsoring our Friday live stream, flatcreekestate.com. All right, let's get a couple of more questions in, guys, before we move on here. How about this one for... I don't know if you guys got to Jose's question.
Did not.
And Jerry. Okay, Jose, are the numbers for each position group on the roster currently being met? Is what Jefe and Jose would like to know from Jefe and Jerry.
I think that leads us to portal. What are needs? We're going to start your Daniel Cruz question, by the way. We'll get to that very Longhorn. Look, I think Texas needs one more defensive lineman in the portal.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would like one more tight end in the portal. One more a speed wide receiver in the portal this spring. Anywhere else you guys see? I mean, I think those are the three for sure. What happens with the kicking competition in the spring? Could that impact? I don't know. I
think experience at corner. If you can get an experience, it could even be, a guy like a Gavin Holmes turned out to be just a guy that's played a lot of power conference football that can kind of be a buffer between, Kobe Black, Cade Phillips, Grayson Littleton, and the field. And if it ends up being those guys are better, then they're better. But I love the talent at corner. I'm just not crazy about the experience at corner right now.
Rod, what about running back? There's going to be a new running backs coach come in. Is he, because Tashard Choice, Jeff said, before the Arizona State game, he's like, Choice is good. I'm good. I don't need to go to the portal for running back. But Jaden Blue's gone pro. Cedric Baxter, Christian Clark are out for the spring, so the new running back coach will not get to see those guys. All he'll get to see is Christian Clark's high school highlight film and Cedric Baxter's film from last year. Is that a potential after the spring? There's a new coach coming in. He may have a slightly different opinion or a different discussion with Sark.
I think that's when you got to keep an open mind. I think you got to keep an open mind. If something comes up, that, hey, this guy's just too best available type guy. This guy's just too good to pass up. Then yeah, because look, last year was proof, man. You could never have enough running backs. You're going to need 3 or 4 of them to get through a year. And the interesting thing for me, Jerry, is Ryan Niblett's had a full year to learn receiver. He's going to have a full year, basically, essentially, to learn running back. Once you get to camp, where does Ryan Niblett go? Where does he fit? Because if we're talking about running back depth or a speed receiver, he can help you in either one of those. And Rod, I think that brings up, we're talking about the pony package, how to get that used more. Again, I go back to 3 guys. I think it's Nick Townsend. I think it's Ryan Niblett and Michael Terry could be the 3 guys that pony package is a way to get them on the field and get them more involved.
Jeff just asked if I'd be his Valentine, saying Nick Townsend in that role. So, all right, go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, no, I agree with you about Michael Terry is the one that interests me the most. I know it may be another season before we see them fully be able to figure out his role within the offense, but that's the guy that can really supercharge the pony package. He can turn it into another monster of multiplicity.
Yeah,
potentially. Let's get to Bay Area Longhorns question. Any chance Daniel Cruz sees the field this year? I know this is one of your favorite guys, Jerry, and you introduced me to Daniel Cruz, and I've been a big fan ever since.
Yeah, so let's just say this first off. Texas love Daniel Cruz. The question is, will he see the field this year? I think spring practice is going to be telling because he played. Look, I give the North Richland Hills staff a lot of credit in high school senior year. They played him some at center to help kickstart his development for his longevity because obviously they're a better team if he just played left tackle and D tackle. So they took away their needs, still won a lot of games, took away their ideal needs to help him develop. So I always tip my cap to those guys because not a lot of high school coaches do that because they have to win as many games as they possibly can, and I get it. So last year, though, Texas was his first year really zeroing in on that position, learning that position, and there's so much that goes into that position. So what happens in the spring? If Cole Hudson plays a lot of center and it looks like he's going to stay at center, then obviously in that plan, the plan is for Daniel Cruz to develop one more year before he takes over at center, or competes with Connor Robertson in his final year at center. So if Cole Hudson establishes himself as center 1 this spring, then the plan will be for Daniel Cruz to develop one more year at center and then go gangbusters after that.
That's a position. That's another position that I know Kyle Flood and Sark haven't gone to the portal for offensive linemen, but that's another one that I just keep an open mind that if there's a center available that's just too good to pass up, depending on how you feel about Cole Hudson coming out of spring. Now, I think we all hope Cole Hudson takes that job, takes the bull by the horns, and comes out of spring, and there's no doubt he's your center in 2025. But if not, then and something's available, then yeah. So I would put it on the back burner, Jerry. That's definitely a luxury, not a necessity. Would be a center out of the portal.
By the way, good time to mention all 3 of those offensive linemen in that 24 class. We've heard really good things about. Obviously, Brandon Baker will probably be right tackle 1 with Kojo, right tackle 2. Those guys will be competing for right tackle. I've heard Nate Kibble had not a tremendous redshirt year. And if Texas hadn't had all that depth at guard this year, at right guard, meaning DJ Campbell and Cole Hudson, then Nate Kibble might have even got on the field. That's how good he was in his redshirt year.
That's good news. Before we get ready, close to ending our live stream, Jerry, would you tell our friends about our good partners over there at South Point Dodge?
I sure will do that, man. Hey, football fans, score an easy point next season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, and their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the very best deal they can. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything, anything and everything. Looking to sell your car? Get South Point's best offer over the phone or online.
All right. Thank you, Jerry, and thank you to South Point Dodge. How about this from Elijah Perez? Are y'all hearing any rumors of any other coaches at risk of being poached by the NFL?
I do think there's some interest from the NFL in a guy or two. Does that now look? Tashard Choice is gone to the NFL, obviously. There were two guys before that the NFL had interest in, and has a pretty substantial job offer to one of them who stayed. So yeah, I definitely think it's out there.
Yeah. Thank you, Elijah. We appreciate the question. All right, before we get out of here, Clint says in honor of baseball being back today, who goes yard first for Texas this year? Jeff, you got a pick on that one? Who goes yard first?
Jerry, Calvin Murray is not an option for an answer. So
I'm out with my knowledge.
And actually, bases loaded will be up at some point today with myself and Blake and CJ. We were asked for kind of a breakout guy. I'm a big Will Gasparino fan. You know, he's one of those rare kids that could have been a top 40 pick in the draft, but dad's in the Dodgers organization, so they had no shortage of information, good or bad, on what to do. But dad played college ball at Oklahoma State. That family and Will really wanted to play college baseball, and he really wanted to play at Texas. Added, 15 to 20 pounds of muscle in the offseason to his frame. Rod, he said he just did it the old-fashioned way, lifting weights, lots of milkshakes, lots of Chick-fil-A nuggets. He said he was eating about 4,500 to 5,000 calories a day trying to bulk up. But I watched him in a squad game, and poor Jared Spencer, who's going to be the Friday night guy, was really good. He had a slider that caught too much of the plate, and Will deposited that thing about 430 feet to dead center. So he's added some power. He can run, can cover ground in center field. I think Will Gasparino is going to have a monster year in the SEC. This guy's ready to be an all SEC player in year one for Texas.
Nice breakdown, Jeff. Appreciate the sneak peek about bases loaded. We'll all be keeping an eye out for that one. All right, thank you to our sponsors, southpointdodge.com. Thank you to our sponsors, flatcreekestate.com as well. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for doing a great job. As always, the real MVP. Jerry, thank you for all of the knowledge and the expertise. Jeff, you as well. Tomorrow we'll be posting a lot of things, including a positional preview. We'll continue our positional previews on the offensive side of the ball. That'll be posted as well tomorrow. Jeff told you about bases loaded. So still got a lot of content that we're going to be getting up for you guys. Go check out OwenTexasFootball.com. So thank you for your participation. Thank you guys for all the super chats as well. We really appreciate it. And if anything breaks, of course, keep it tuned here to Owen Texas Football. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there, and hook 'em horns.